Welcome to the Rainbow Registered 1 year in. We are doing a little review of our newest program with the CGLCC, as well as a little bit of a case study on Ontario, which has been hugely successful in undertaking the Rainbow Registry program and getting LGBT plus tourism on the map as they engage in a bunch of different projects, actually. But first of all, just wanted to give a welcome to our online audience. We are being taped live in front of a studio audience of about 4, including our panelists, so we appreciate those of you who are watching this after the fact online very much. So just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on how this is going to go. It's mostly a panel. Excuse me for 1 second as I click through. We're just going to do a quick introduction of our panelists. Then we're going to talk about what is the Rainbow Registered accreditation. Then we'll do a quick little snapshot of our successes so far a year in. And then most of what we're going to do is have a panel discussion, just talking about why LGBT plus safe space is so important, what Ontario is doing on various programs to move it forward. And then we'll leave a little bit of time for questions and answers, which might be limited. It's a lot of pressure on our 4 in-house people, but we'll take that as it comes. First of all, I just wanted to thank very much the panelists who are joining us today, give you a little bit of background on them. To my far left, we have Debra Mansillo. She is the Vice President of Industry Relations and International Marketing at Destination Ontario. She works with a dynamic team to lead the efforts of showcasing Ontario as a global destination. She also strengthens Destination Ontario's relationships with tourism stakeholders to ensure collaboration, sharing of research information, and marketing best practices across the industry. Debra also strives to expand the inclusiveness and diversity of Ontario's tourism marketing. Her past achievements include delivering the very first ever LGBTQ plus tourism marketing magazine back in 2013, and other fun things, being part of Destination Ontario's award-winning campaigns such as the 2015 Para-Pan Am Games Epic is On campaign and the 2017 Where Am I campaign. So Deb, thank you for joining us. Next to Deb, we have Rachel Glover. She is the Director of Diversity and Inclusion Programming at STEM Consulting. She's an advocate for at-risk or marginalized communities and an experienced trainer and educator for public and private sector organizations, specialized in the area of sexuality, diversity, inclusivity, respect in the workplace, and other related topics. And she comes here with a special hat on. She is part of the team that's working on the Destination Northern Ontario project, which now has encompassed all of Ontario, in rolling out an LGBTQ plus survey and assessment and community engagement project. So she'll talk a little bit about that. For those of you who were looking on the website, yes, it was supposed to be David McLaughlin, but he could not join us. He is the Executive Director of Destination Northern Ontario. He had to stay back for personal reasons, so we're very happy that Rachel agreed to step in at the last minute. And last but not least, we have Spencer Toth. He's the Manager of Tourism and Accreditation Programs at Canada's LGBT plus Chamber of Commerce. That's us. In his role, Spencer works on the organization's various tourism initiatives, training programs, and the Rainbow Registered Accreditation Program. Spencer has a BBA Honors in Marketing and Entrepreneurship and Innovation from Simon Fraser's Beatty School of Business. And the more fun one, if I may say, is a joint MSc in Tourism Management from the University of Southern Denmark, University of Ljubljana, and University of Girona. He has published research on rural gay tourism in British Columbia in the Journal of Rural and Community Development, and there's a follow-up book chapter slated for publication in 2023. So super happy to have Spencer as part of the team. And then, of course, there's me. My name is Loren Christie. I'm helping the Chamber out. I work with them in business development and really excited to be getting the word out about the Rainbow Registered program. So just a little bit of background. Oh my God, our studio audience is really gaining in strength here. We've almost doubled in the last 30 seconds. It's incredible. So what is the Rainbow Registered program? I'm going to give you just a little bit of background before we dig into with the panel. So during COVID, one of the silver linings is the CGLCC got a grant to work with Tourism HR Canada, as well as the federal government, and some outside consultants, to develop the very first safe space inclusive program in Canada. So it's a national standard that was developed with those various partners, and it is industry-wide. It is not market-specific. It's all markets, all industries across the country. So some of our recent signups include Pfizer, Cogeco. We're working with various companies, but it does have a very obvious implication for the tourism business. The program is designed so that an LGBT plus consumer, guest, visitor, or employee can know that a business, an organization, an association, whatever, is a place that they will feel safe and included because they've met some rigorous standards that hit a certain level that we established as part of the program. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the program itself. To suffice it to say that it looks at 4 different pillars when analyzing a business, including policies and practices. And I say practices is important because some small businesses don't have full policies written out, so it's really important to include practices as part of that. Look at trainings. We look at commitment to inclusive leadership, and that only means in terms of the organization itself from the top down, but it also means as an organization, what is that organization doing as a leader in their community? Are they engaging in supplier diversity practices? Are they helping LGBT plus community and charity either philanthropically or just by community support and who they support and partner with? So lots of different things at play. And then the last one is a culture of inclusivity, which is sort of a catch-all and can be small, wide-ranging things, include everything from whether you offer a gender-neutral washroom in your workplace or your place of visiting, whether you have marketing imagery that's all-inclusive and diverse. So it's a lot of things that people can look at. And the other thing I think is really important about the program that everybody should know is that it's not a tick box. It's not that you get accredited and then you move on and you don't worry about it anymore. No one gets all of the things marked off as they go through the accreditation. I haven't seen one business do it because it's a journey. So you do the accreditation, hopefully you pass, but then you get the report back from the assessor who works with you and gives you the report so that you can come up with a strategy moving forward on things that you might be missing that you didn't know that you weren't doing. So it's a great way to move forward. And I also like to make the point that if you're a business that isn't sure if you're doing enough or you're not sure if you're going to get accredited, go through the process anyway, because it is a great way to hold yourself accountable, take the steps to go through, see what you might be missing. And as part of our program, if you don't get the accreditation on the first go, we keep the assessment open for a year at no extra charge to you so that you can come back, make those changes, and then get your accreditation. So I always say, if you're wondering whether to go through it, absolutely you should. If you're working and looking to create a safe space, now is the time to do it. There's no reason to hold back. A little bit on where we're at with the program. So the program literally launched last year at the summit, which was just about this time last year. It was a slow burn. We got some businesses signed up trying to get the word out. We had a little bit of a PR campaign to start it off. Since that time, myself has been brought on, Spencer has been brought on. We've just hired someone out in Atlantic Canada. We have sellers also out in Atlantic Canada as well as out on the West Coast helping promote the program. So we are now really ramping up to get the story out about the Rainbow Registered. We have a number of businesses signed up already, and we have about 230 at various stages of the pipeline in terms of going through the assessment process to get registered. So we're feeling very hopeful about where we're going to end up. The ecosystem is what we're now focusing on. So it was great to get people signed up, and we still want more signed up for sure. But what we realized is we needed to create a community. So that includes our assessors. It includes our success stories so that the people that are Rainbow Registered can share some of the successes that they've had. And that comes in the form of a lot of really great media relations that we've had. We've had in Ontario, which we'll get to, where we've had a lot of focus. We've had coverage in the Hamilton Spectator, the Kingston Whig. We've also been in the Globe and Mail, on CTV, on Global News. We are primarily focusing on getting a lot of those messages out, and as I said, creating that ecosystem. One of the biggest parts of that is our website launch, which we're going to get into a little bit, and we thank Deborah and the folks at Destination Ontario for sponsoring that. But we have launched a soft launch, but it is now in existence, a consumer website. And so that if you're a Rainbow Registered business, you can now be part of a directory that an LGBT plus visitor can go online across the country and see where those Rainbow Registered businesses are. So that when they're planning their time, it's not necessarily about having LGBT plus product, but in our research that we did pre-pandemic, LGBT plus travelers want to do mostly what everybody else wants to do, but they want to do it in a way that they can feel safe and included and know that they're going to be treated with respect when they walk in the door. So this solves that problem. So yes, it's great to have LGBT plus specific product, but this shows that you're welcome, you're inclusive, and if you want to go onto this consumer website, you can now go through and plan out where you stay, where you eat, what you do, based on those businesses that are accredited. And so we've started off a little bit small as we get our ramped up, but we're making good progress. And so before I turn it over to the panel, as I do my elevator pitch here, I did want to just set the tone for why we're talking about Ontario specifically for the Rainbow Registered. Ontario, I'm going to give best in class for this so far as we've gone through this process in the last 2 years. As part of our project at the Chamber, one of the things we added in, I just pointed out, is destination audits. That's a huge, big snapshot of what's going on in a particular destination, and the Rainbow Registered accreditations are going to become part of that. But these are the places in Ontario that have already gone through or are going through the audits. Blue Mountain, Kingston, London, Oxford County, Thousand Islands, Niagara-on-the-Lake, and Prince Edward County just in the last year and a half alone, which is fantastic. This means that these destinations have taken it upon it to meet with their stakeholders, to meet with their LGBT plus community, and develop strategies long-term to start welcoming the LGBT plus community. So that was just something we did. On top of that, which is, thank you, Rachel, for joining on behalf of David, we have an Ontario-wide project which is surveying potential LGBTQ plus visitors from around the world. We actually just had IGLTA, the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association, has just dropped our survey out again on their socials to get input about visitors coming to Ontario, surveying potential visitors, providing training to all of the areas and RTOs around Ontario, working with them on product development, and updating imagery, because visual assets are so important, as well as working with the communities as they move forward. So these two projects, we brought them all together into one, so we're working in tandem with Ontario on making sure that the LGBT plus visitor has an amazing experience here. So just a few numbers to share with you in terms of this. So Rainbow Registered accredited businesses so far, we have 54 in total, and 31 of them are here in Ontario. In the pipeline, about to get accredited, we have 40 across the country, but 37 of those are in Ontario. So you can see that the focus has been big Ontario so far. And then leads outside of that, meaning just some initial interest confirmed, but we need to follow up, is about 50-50. We have 100 across the province. As I said, we have sellers out in Atlantic Canada, BC, who are now gaining momentum, and but still 50 of those are in Ontario. So Ontario is really primed by the end of this year to really be able to, for a visitor to go anywhere they want across the province and stay somewhere where they feel safe and welcomed. So the consumer-facing website, as I mentioned already, is helping us with that. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of that. If you don't know it, it's rainbowregistered.ca. You can go in, you can track down through the map and find out anywhere where you want to go. We also, as you can see there, dedicated into different categories, and this is just a snapshot. There's a lot more categories below that where you can go and plan out your trip. And then the only other thing I'll say about it is there's some wonderful travel stories based from Ontario on there for the launch, because Ontario helped us out so much. We put a lot of Ontario stories out to start us off, including 10 influencers that have worked with us. And so we are going to have a reach starting last week and over the next 2 weeks of over 350,000 followers from these LGBT plus travel influencers. And we dropped an ad in USA Today talking for their June Pride Guide, so talking to American visitors about coming to Ontario and using this map as a way of planning their travel. So that was my very, very long-winded start, and now I want to talk to these wonderful people that are here. So, Spencer, I'm going to start with you. Why does LGBT plus tourism matter?
That is a wonderful question, and I think beyond just generally that the LGBT plus travel market is, full of a wonderful, vibrant community, I think that, looking more on the destination perspective, LGBT plus travelers are much higher spending compared to their heterosexual counterparts. They are more likely to have a passport. They're more likely to spend more time traveling and go on more trips per year. There's so many different factors that go into why this is an important market for tour operators and destinations. But I think the biggest thing with the LGBT plus market is that you can't necessarily attract the community if you don't directly invite them in. That's something in my research I did prior to joining the CGLCC was really important, is that they want to know that they're welcomed in the destination, but also even beyond that, there is a lot of considerations around not pandering to the community and pink washing, as we'd say in the marketing world, that, let's be honest, most of the community can see right through that you're just chasing our money and you're not actually genuinely interested in welcoming us and giving us an inclusive travel destination to visit. So I think a big thing going forward will be the safety considerations. I think there will be a lot of considerations around how can we make our communities truly inclusive, and the follow-off effects from that, I think, which are going to be beyond just the LGBT plus community. There will be other communities that will feel more welcome to travel to these destinations as well, that may be underrepresented in the travel market generally.
Rachel, anything to add as to why you think the LGBT plus tourism market matters?
Yeah, so we're quite aligned, but beyond the obvious that it's good for business to be an international destination of choice. It really is just the right thing to do.
Deborah?
I would agree with both of you. One thing that Spencer hit on was you described the perfect tourist traveler to come to Ontario. They are the demographic. They spend more, they have their passport, they're willing to try anything. And what as marketers we didn't want to sort of pinkwash, as you mentioned, but we were lacking the nuances in knowing that they need to feel safe. And that is an important factor. I was listening to a travel gay podcast, and one of the commentators was talking about they had a friend who took their family, their young son, on a cruise. And I guess at cruises you get assigned tables. I've never been fortunate to be on a cruise yet. And when they got to the table, they didn't ask for special consideration, but when they got to the table, there was another family with their child. And their child was quite happy to see another child, but the next night, they asked to be moved, the other family. And that can be avoided. Knowing that is an issue, I think that's something we have to look at. But it is something that is important, and it is definitely the right thing to do.
Very good. And so in terms of Ontario, and I'll stick with you, Deborah, what was the catalyst for Ontario to get involved in specifically? Like the right thing to do, but what else was it about it that you thought, this is the right market for us in Ontario?
I think what I've said, one of the things why I got into marketing was, as I said, I'm a woman of color, pretty well a unicorn in the business, and it was important to me to make sure that I was represented. And we did that through imagery. So I was able, as I grew into the organization, I was able to make that influence happen. And then I looked around and said, what else? Who else isn't here? What's important? And LGBTQ was an important factor, and we had to address it. And so that's what we did. That's how we started out. Slowly, we started building up imagery. We started talking to people in the community to find out what is needed, what we should do, and that's basically it.
And David, I know who couldn't be here today, but he is a part of the LGBT plus community. He owns a fly fishing lodge in the north, but he's also the executive director of Destination Northern Ontario. And their first step to get involved, because they determined that there was perceptions of Northern Ontario that were probably not very favorable to members of the community, and they found that there was misgivings about the north with respect to safety and a welcoming attitude, and they made it a priority in terms of working with that community. Rachel, what about from your perspective? So just to let people know, so people like Deborah and Dave are doing this for Ontario, and then you get brought in this project. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So I got involved through STEM Consulting in the deliverables of this project for Destination Northern Ontario. So we are delving in to make the regions we're working with more open and welcome to the LGBTQ market. It was essentially the North that kind of started this, and then it expanded to other RTOs. The North really wanted to show that Ontario was and could be an open and inclusive and welcoming space for the 2S LGBTQ travelers and visitors.
Yeah, and I think if you for those in the room and for those online, if you're taking some tips, one of the tips that I'll send out, and it goes exactly back to the survey that the CGLCC did prior to COVID. One of the key ingredients in making sure that you have success is whether it's an ally or a member of the community like Deb or David is, you need someone who believes it and is going to drive it forward. If you really need a champion, and I think that one of the secrets to Ontario's success is we have people like Deborah and David at the top who are champions, who are pushing this. And you see other organizations and destinations who they know it's important, but if you don't have that champion, it's going to be a problem. So I think that is one of the secrets to success here in Ontario.
And Lauren, I just want to add one other thing. It is part of our DNA as Canadians. We're known to be opening. We were one of the first countries to have gay marriages approved legally, 2005, and it's part of who we are, and we have to maintain that brand, and that is a selling feature internationally around the world for us.
And Deborah, you can keep the microphone for now, because I'm going to, part of that then, so as we move into connecting some of these dots with these programs, so why is inclusive space so important? Like when you're talking about an LGBT plus traveler coming to Ontario and walking into a hotel or walking to a restaurant, why is that so important that we made sure that branding, as you're talking about, is there?
Because we have to live up to what we say that we are, and we need to provide safety. As I said, if I wasn't an ally, I probably wouldn't realize that safety was really important. As just a traveler, you're just thinking, oh, I might find out what's going on in the country, but not knowing that this can definitely affect your travel. It's your safety. I believe that diversity is one of the selling features definitely for Canada, especially for Ontario. We have people from all over the world, and we're opening and welcoming, and we need to ensure that that's upheld. It's just common sense for me.
Spencer, as part of the CGLCC, why do you think inclusive space is so important? You were brought in to help with the Rainbow Registered Accreditation Program. Why is it so important?
I think, echoing Deborah a bit there, I think that it's very important that people are comfortable in a space and they know going in that their best interests are in the mind of management and staff, that the staff have potentially received training on how to interact and work with the LGBT plus community, and ensure that they aren't going to face any fear of violence or that, because safety is a #1 consideration. In the research that we did, I believe with Tourism HR Canada just before the pandemic, that the #1 factor in choosing a destination for the LGBT plus community is safety. And so in Canada, we may, generally feel that's not as much of a concern because we are generally seen as a welcoming and inclusive country, and we are very accepting generally of the LGBT plus community. But that's not the case everywhere, and we can't purport to say that everywhere is the exact same on that. So with Rainbow Registered specifically, and I think we might talk about that a little bit later, but I think that that's been a really important new program because we really want to show consumers, hey, you're coming to this destination, where are the places I can go for dinner, stay at a hotel, go shopping, that really have the policies, practices, and culture of inclusivity in place where I can feel comfortable going there and I am not going to encounter any issues if I'm going with my partner or anything else like that. So I think that it's a comfort and a safety thing above all else.
Very good. And in terms of the program that Destination Northern Ontario, as you've indicated, Rachel, is now rolling out for all of Ontario, what are the goals? Like, what is the program goal with what you're doing specifically?
Right. So we have 3 main goals with this project. The first is to educate and do capacity building with tourism operators. The second was to expand and market new and enhanced tourism experiences. And then lastly, we wanted to combine experiences into itineraries for the North and throughout Ontario.
Right. And I think that last one is kind of where we've come together with the CGLCC, because when you talk about, so how does the Rainbow Registered program factor into what they're doing in Ontario? And I think in a lot of our initial committee calls, there was lots of discussions about, we have to come up with LGBT plus product. We have to do this, we have to do that, and then market it and whatever. And that's a lot of work and it's a lot of resources in an industry, frankly, that we've all heard it. There's labor shortages, there's resource shortages, they're tired. So it actually came together in a really nice way, because what we realized is based on all the research we have, LGBT plus tourists, yeah, we love a good pride, we love a good event, don't get me wrong. But when you look at the surveys and the results, it's farther down on the list. Most LGBTQ plus travelers, they just want good food. They want to go to attractions. They want to do what everybody else wants to do, but they want to do it in a safe and inclusive space. So what's really great about Rachel's project that she's working on with Destination Northern Ontario is that is combining what we do, and basically what we're trying to put out there is, don't worry right now about all this new product. Just get yourself Rainbow Registered, and all of a sudden, any LGBTQ plus traveler can come, and as I mentioned earlier, they can plan their trip, whether it's in Ontario and hopefully the other provinces soon, and have a trip that is designed for them based on these safe and inclusive spaces. So really exciting. So, Spencer, anything to add to that?
I was just maybe going to say that especially in some of the more remote or rural communities, that's an additional consideration, I think, because a lot of these smaller communities don't have the population and LGBT plus community to support a dedicated space, a gay bar or something like that. It just doesn't happen. And even for me, I'm based in Kamloops, British Columbia, and we're a town of about 100,000 people, but we do not have a dedicated space per se for the community. But it's important to know where we'll still be welcomed and where is going to be a place that we feel safe. And so I think that that's probably the most important thing, and especially in the research I did in rural LGBT plus travel, that was a major consideration, is where can I go and I know I'm going to be welcomed.
Yeah, and that is we mentioned it off the top. It was one of David McLaughlin's keys for getting involved was that perception in rural areas. So let's talk about that a little bit more. And thank you for bringing it back to that, Spencer. Rachel, you know, how do you address that now? So it's fine to do this research and whatever, but so how are we addressing getting those perceptions changed in the rural areas?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Really early in our research, we saw that there were some instances of people not being open and welcome to this market, but they were very rare. So the majority of the operators that are involved were very eager, and that was like a very quick and clear interest in gaining knowledge, awareness, and becoming Rainbow registered. So there was very few instances of people not being open to this.
Deborah, how would you combat that? Any tips from your side in terms
Actually, I totally agree with Rachel. What I found with all the stakeholders we've ever dealt with, everyone has been very open and accepting. They want to work, but they just don't know how to. And so they're looking for someone to show them the way. What should I do? Training is really important for them. So I think this survey gives us an opportunity to show what's lacking, what they need. But yeah, in my 20 odd years, I have never seen a stakeholder say, no, I don't want to participate. Never.
Yeah, and I'm so glad because you teed up the next question so beautifully, and I don't know if you meant to do that, but again, people in the room, but people online as well, what are some quick tips for businesses that they can take action to start building a more inclusive space? And I'll just preface that by saying, you know, in my experience going out, and I'm not to say it's not an important part, you do need to have an overall strategy. You do need to have a bigger picture, but I think some people find that daunting, particularly if they're small operators or businesses like, oh, I don't have time to get into all this. It involves too much. It doesn't. Eventually it should. You should have a bigger, more inclusive strategy in any kind of business goal that you have. But there are quick things you can do to just indicate that you have that intention and that you do want to work with the community. So Rachel, do you have a couple of quick tips you want to share with people?
Yeah, absolutely. So people can be more inclusive with their marketing. That involves representation, you know, having open discussions, becoming Rainbow registered, or utilizing other programs like that. And then there's tons of other tangible things people can do. They can start offering their pronouns, first understanding what the significance and training your staff on the significance, which you can find lots of information online or through different programs. So, you know, offering program pronouns, having them in your email signatures, because when you present them, that shows you understand them and will respect other people's. You can adjust your documents to be more inclusive. So instead of having like a box for male or female, have other or don't wish to disclose. You can also just, what was some of our other words? Oh, gender neutral washrooms, using gender neutral language. Even if people don't have a gender neutral washroom, even just a private washroom area or private change rooms, so people will be free from any harassment or violence. They can use those washrooms or areas if that's their preference. And these are all things people can do, you know, free and immediately.
Yeah. Spencer, anything to add to that?
I think I covered most of the ones that I was thinking of as well. I think the big visibility piece is a really big one because I think at the end of the day, a lot of people that I've talked to in doing research with the community is that, you know, I want to feel like I'm seen in the marketing that a lot of these organizations are doing, and I want to feel welcome, but it's not as simple as we saw yesterday, June 1st, Corporate Pride Month, everyone's rainbow symbols go up, you know, that's a nice show of support, but it is to an extent pinkwashing. So I think that a big thing is just like, especially even just showing, you know, couples that are potentially part of the LGBT plus community and more diverse, I guess, digital assets is something that's really important. And I definitely want to echo the, you know, gender neutral language is really important. Pronouns, like especially, you know, email signatures or even if you're in person, having those added to like a name tag or something, if you're working in a hotel or another accommodation venue, are simple things that you can do that don't take a lot of effort. Other than that, I'd just say training. Super important, and there's a lot of great options out there beyond just the CGLCC. We have a lot of great partners that we work with and other organizations across the country that are really looking to help organizations understand the importance of LGBT plus diversity, equity, and inclusion. So,
for sure. I'm just going to step back and a bigger picture question for Deborah here. Those are great tips. Clearly, this is an LGBTQ plus session. there's a diversity, equity, inclusion is a much bigger picture, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and sustainability is also a big issue right now. So, Deborah, just in terms of Ontario, you have all these operators, some big, some small, but again, these small operators, we all feel sympathy in the amount of effort, resources, time they can put into various things. Sustainability, big issue. Diversity, equity, inclusion from different areas, big issue. Why, I'm not going to say it's your only focus, but why such an interest, which has worked out really well for Ontario, but why such an interest on LGBTQ+? Why did you focus a little bit more on that than maybe sustainability or some of the other hot topics these days?
Well, there are a couple reasons. With LGBTQ, basically as a marketer, the revenue's there. It's definitely there. We're starting to understand it. They're getting representation. They're a large marketing block. With sustainability, it's something that's fairly new in Canada and actually in the world. There are some countries that are doing it very well, but what we're finding here in Canada, there is so many definitions of sustainability. What does that mean? What does it look like? Do we actually have it? So we can't really put our fingers on it. Now, within the LGBT marketing, we do look at things that are sustainability. We do know that that segment is looking for maybe longer stays. They don't want to get on a plane and fly, like short time visits. They're being more conscious. So we can add that in, but the LGBTQ plus market is the one that we're really focusing on, and for that reason.
Very good. I did have a next question, which I think I'm just going to skip because we already answered it, but I'll just emphasize it in case the virtual audience missed it. How can tourism and hospitality businesses ensure their staff are prepared for interacting? And I think we've all said it, training, training, and training, more training.
Right.
And, we were at a training session yesterday in Kingston, and Kingston has done an amazing job in the province of Ontario. If Ontario is the best in class in Canada, Ontario is the best in or Kingston's the best in class in Ontario. They have gone through the destination audit. They have done the Rainbow Registered Inclusivity training. They have done all of these things, not only just Tourism Kingston, but the Kingston BIA, the accommodations partners in Kingston, and their goal is to have Rainbow Registered businesses throughout their downtown by the end of 2022. So really amazing. But they came to our training that we put on there yesterday because they are committed to continuing with training. It's not, again, something you just do once and then move on. Things evolve, languages change, nuances happen. So really great. So if anyone's wondering how we get going on this, just do training, commit to it. And it's always really hard. Again, busy summertime right now, hard to make the time, hard to make the resources. If you can't make the time right now, we forgive you, but definitely make the time in the fall when you have some time to get a little bit quieter. One other thing I wanted to talk about, which we also breached on, but a little more, is why is it important to have a digital asset library that's reflective of this community? And I say that and want to point it out because, again, it's one of the big things that Destination Ontario did as part of this program is they've, in partnership with Destination Ontario, they have put tons of money into redoing all of the digital assets across the province, and that is happening right now with a goal to be done by the end of this month. Why is that important, Rachel?
Well, it's really important if we're going to stand out as a safe and welcoming place for our diverse visitors to be able to see themselves in our communities and in our regions. So that would involve, to say that you're open and welcoming but then have no representation, that messaging won't be consistent, and we want that to be aligned. It's kind of like saying you're a diverse employer, but then all of your employees have the same race, gender, and sexual orientation. So we need to go beyond that and make sure, as I said, our diverse visitors can see themselves in our communities and regions.
For sure. Anything different to add, Deborah? Or?
All I would say is that at Destination Ontario, we made a huge effort in the last, I would say, 10 years to build up our digital library with LGBTQ representation. Would I say it was difficult at first? Yes, because you wanted to make sure that it was authentic. Like, we're a marketing agency, we hire models, but we had to say, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for LGBTQ authentic. And so in the beginning it was hard, but now it's so much easier and so much, it's paid off for us, 100%.
For sure, and I'll give a shout out. Having been part of this project on the committee, I can tell you, all of these RTOs that are doing these projects right now, every single one of their models are from the community. They are very committed to being authentic. And I'll give another shout out, not only to that, but also back to the CGLC. What's really nice is it's come full circle is the photographer that's being used up north is the only photographer that's on the certified supplier list at the CGLCC. So they made an effort to say, who should we use? And there's a certified supplier based in Thunder Bay that they use. So it not only are the models authentic, but the photographer himself is authentic. And so really great efforts there, trying to really put their money where their mouth is in terms of this Ontario project. Spencer, anything to add to any of that with the digital assets?
I think most of that's been covered, but yeah, I think it's one of those things that, again, I've talked to people through my research, and you know, if it's somewhere that they don't know is very LGBT plus friendly, then they want to be able to see themselves in the marketing and stuff like that. And you know, it's easy to just say, oh, I'm just going to go there. It's Canada. I'm sure I'll be fine. But if you don't see yourself in the marketing, then it's hard to believe that you're really truly committed to, you know, inclusion of the community. So I think that, you know, it's definitely just making a conscious effort like Ontario has been doing. And I think that's something that it would be great to see more destinations across the country do.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of destinations in the U.S. that are super hot spots. Those of us in the community know San Francisco, Provincetown, Key West. So what can we do? You know, we're here and we're doing great things. What can we do to move forward to sort of emulate some of those destinations? Spencer, what would you say to that? Can we be that? It would be great. Can we get there?
I mean, we could, and a lot of the hot destinations, you know, they have a very long time established community when you're thinking of New York City, San Francisco, etc. But there's a lot of smaller niche ones like Provincetown and Key West, and even like closer to New York, like Fire Island is, you know, been really big with the community. So I think that the big thing on the destination development side is not necessarily just promoting it as a safe and great destination for the community, but I think it's at that point getting more into products and tours and stuff like that. They're specifically focused on LGBT plus travelers.
The next step.
Yeah, that's the next step, because if you want this to be a sustainable, ongoing thing where the community sees your destination as a hotspot for gay travel or something, then you know you need to be able to point to different tour operators and different experiences or events, and that goes beyond Pride. You know, Pride's a great event and a great opportunity to engage with the community, but there's also music festivals or dance nights, or you know, I've seen camping events happening in rural areas in BC recently. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can look at how we can make each community more positive. And if anyone ever becomes a CGLCC member, we do have a fantastic guide to LGBT plus tourism products. So just going to give that a little shout out.
Deborah, anything to add to that in terms of what you're doing in Ontario for next steps and where you?
I think what we're looking for is content. So we're looking for itineraries. We're looking for suggestions, because we have the audience. We can amplify it. I just need the product to market, and that's what's most important. So with this registry, we're seeing businesses. They're able to share their knowledge with each other, which would be really key is if they learn how to joint market efforts together, come together. Like if I'm making this up, a butter tart, you know, trail, and there's an attraction that is LGBTQ, partner with each other, be part of an itinerary, and that would help promote.
Get on the Rainbow Registered accreditation program, get on the consumer website.
Exactly.
And so once we start marketing this website even more, and that hopefully becomes the go-to. It's interesting, I just saw on LinkedIn yesterday, there is a similar program in the States that's being launched like today at the Stonewall Bar in New York for the American version of what this is. And the Brits have reached out to us. They want to create something similar. So this will become a thing for travelers, not only in our country, but they will have in each of their own countries a standard set that they can look to. So this website, we're hoping, is really going to open up a lot for us. I will just read a little bit back from what David said about turning, Northern Ontario into the next Fire Island. He said that might be a bit of a stretch, but there are destinations in Ontario that could. But he said, let's look at the ones that do it and make it work. But he also said, there's so much room in the marketplace for secondary LGBT plus destinations, and that's his goal for research and development in the north. Yes, they're not going to become Fire Island, but they want people to go there and feel safe and be able to go there, and people who like to fish and hunt and do all those things that you do in the north, but are part of the community to be able to go there. So. Rachel, anything to add about plans for the future in the market?
Yeah, so we're kind of working towards that right now with this project we're doing with the DNO and the CGLCC. So right now our next steps involve a variety of deliverables that will inform the onset of the project. What we're trying to do is identify which operators are open and wanting to move forward to the next step in the program. From there, we're going to work with the Rainbow registered operators and help them develop new products and experiences for tourism.
Awesome. And so just in general, because this is a national meeting and we've been focusing on Ontario, but just to give other provinces and destinations and businesses, you know, what advice would you have for someone at West or out East who might be watching this thinking, I want to get more involved? What advice would you give them, Rachel? What would you say?
I think the first thing you need to do is understand the why. Like, what's your motivation for getting involved? Because that'll really fuel, like I think you were talking about it earlier, we have to have these champions that are really believe and advocate for this inclusive community we want to create. So asking yourself the why and knowing your significance is really important. And then reaching out to other regions that are successful at this, getting support from them, support from the CGLCC, other programs and businesses. So seeing who's doing it right and who you want to kind of, you know, follow in line with, and talking to them and seeing what worked for them and what steps they took. You can get tons of support from different people in the community.
Spencer, what would you say to some destinations out there that are looking to move forward in this market?
Yeah, I echo most of what Rachel said. It's be proactive. It's not something that will just come overnight. You have to actually make a tangible effort to address the community, and that's not just in, you know, marketing to the community. It's in actually creating policies that support, even, like, for example, there's a lot of organizations that we've been working with, Rainbow Registered, that are starting to do policies for transitioning employees as part of the trans community. So I think that's really important as well, as not just how we address customers, but I think even if it's how we address our staff as well, that show that we are somewhere that will be a great place to visit and a great business, for example. I think I'll keep it short there.
Sure.
Now.
And I'm going to give the last word to Debra, because I think in the bio, for those of you who had mentioned Debra, one of the first things she did, it was the first LGBT plus magazine put out in 2013. Well, that's almost 10 years ago. So this is not a short journey for Ontario. It's not like you snapped your fingers and got there overnight. What would you say to some of the destinations out there that want to start on this journey and grow this market?
I actually think imagery is one of the most important. It's the low-hanging fruit. It's not as expensive. And I think that's the first step. That's where I would go to, because people need to see that they are there represented, they're included. So that would be my first step, definitely for smaller businesses.
Okay. And I would also echo to say, tied with that is get Rainbow registered. Go through the
Yes,
process.
yes.
Find
How
out where
can I
you,
forget?
and if you don't get Rainbow registered, as I said, I'm going to reiterate it one last time, it doesn't matter, because what you've done is you've taken accountability, you've seen where you need to fill your holes, and you have 1 year to come back, take action, take some actionable steps, make it happen, and then become registered, and then start that journey toward inclusivity, because it never will end. It is not a tick box. And so again, I go back, I'll also shout out to Rachel, I think, who said, what's your motivation? It's not a one and done. It's, if you start it, get involved. Like Debra's been very committed on behalf of Ontario and partners in Ontario for very long, it is a long-term thing. It is not a one and done type of thing. So that is it for our presentation. I think we're in pretty good time. We have about 10 minutes left. If anybody has any questions, and if you don't, we'll wrap up early. But anyone, any questions? Yes, sir.
Should I use the microphone?
Yeah, actually, I can do that. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm with IGLTA. Hi, Debra.
Hi, how are you?
We've met.
I know. I was looking at you. I thought I know you.
Yeah. And we're actually also creating an accreditation to validate these more local or national certifications that exist and that are out there, but to, put them in an international level as well. So we'll be launching that soon. That's just a fact. But I do have a question more about the destinations that you choose to market Ontario to. I know the U.S. is a key one, and you mentioned that the website is being marketed to the U.S., but is there any other key markets that you're really considering to attract LGBTQ travelers to Ontario?
Yeah, we're looking at the German market. Actually, we have been in the German market. We've been in the UK. We've been in Japan. And those are the only markets so far. We've seen good results on them. And We attend IGLTA, and which has helped us get credibility in those markets. So we're focusing on those three at the moment. Up and coming markets for us are France, which we'd like to get into, but it's slow, and I only have so much money. But now that we have a lot of RTOs and DMOs that are coming on board and want to help, I think we're going to be able to expand that.
And one more question. Do you align with Destination Canada on this strategy? Do you have any type of alignment on LGBTQ promotion?
I would say somewhat. They do help us. They do support when we go into some of these markets. We're not always in the same markets together. What is good about Destination Canada is they are the halo brand. So when I go into, say, a Germany or a UK, if I say I'm from Ontario, they're like, They don't really get the province, but they get Canada and the feeling and the halo that comes with that. So that helps us. Definitely Toronto is a gateway city. Niagara Falls, one of the most famous addresses in the world. Those two cities definitely. But the smaller communities, it's a little harder. So we kind of go in with the Canada message first, partner with Destination Canada, and then we go into with the cities.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you. Hi, Peter X, Corporate Specialty Services, which is a commercial cleaning company, has nothing to do with tourism. Okay, so I'll get that out there right away. Real life experience. My partner and I, we were in San Diego a couple of years ago, and in the gay area, and we were holding hands, and we had a number of yahoos driving by in the pickup trucks, basically saying all kinds of perjured statements. Okay, so your points regarding safety is there. We experienced it. And you're going from a place like Toronto to a gay neighborhood like Toronto, and then go to a gay neighborhood in San Diego and get those roadside comments. And all of a sudden it's like, I don't feel welcome here. And I have to admit, as someone here living in Ontario, okay, I still have reservations about traveling up north. But it's not in regards to businesses. It's regard to individuals employed by those businesses. So when you're talking about training, I also think you need to understand a code of conduct for these companies in regards to their employees. And what are we all about? Okay? Because you can have all the training in the world, but if an employee's mindset is homophobic, racist, anti-trans, etc., then all the training in the world won't address that. And so part of what I'm trying to come up with here is for your imagery that you were referring to before, my imagery for me is, do I feel safe up in Northern Ontario holding hands with my same-sex partner in public? If I don't, if I'm going back in the closet, because I might experience one of those yahoos, okay, that's real life. I might have a gay positive, right, LGBTQ2 positive coffee shop, but a block down, I'm being harassed.
Yep.
So that to me is something that needs to be addressed. And part of that, if you're working with these people, is working with the businesses, the BIAs, and the mayors, and say, if there is a same-sex couple holding hands, do you think they'll feel safer? If there is an outwardly public trans, is this person going to be respected by their pronouns, but also feel safer? Can they be public? In public, not just in a quote-unquote LGBTQ2 positive space. And so when you're marketing and you're talking to these people, talk to their BIAs and their businesses and the mayors and say, if you're not doing that, then that's part of what you need to work on. Because I can tell you something. If I'm seeing, okay, something promoting Sudbury or North Bay, and I see a gay couple or a lesbian couple, okay, holding hands, then it's like, that to me makes me feel safe. But right now, I can honestly say,
But you're saying
I don't feel that.
Is that the reality?
I've got basically businesses, but not culture. And I still feel exposed, and I'm mindful of that if I'm traveling north.
And I hear what you're saying. Like, look, when I was growing up, I was born here in Toronto, and sure, going up north, I'd be the only black person up there. But I was like, I'm here. So you're going to have to get used to it. I know it's very easy for me to say that, but I think over time when you start seeing imagery, when you see businesses that are going to back that, and then people are starting to go, that sort of ignorance gets forced out. And that's the only way I think you can do it. Like, you are going to run into yahoos all over the world, anywhere. Here in Toronto, you're going to run into yahoos. But I think it's when businesses see that this is the right thing to do, and you're willing to go there and say, I'm going to go, I think that will start making the change. It's not going to be automatic, but I think it will.
Yeah, and I just to add to that, just so you know, it is a journey, as I said, so you're not going to snap your fingers and all of a sudden everybody in Sudbury is on board. But we take your point about where you start. And just so you know, we start at the level of the destination marketing organization, the BIAs, the chambers. That's who we're talking to. And so we're getting them on board first, making sure that they're going through the process themselves, and then we float it down to their members. Not every member is going to get on board. You have to want it. You have to be motivated to do it. So it won't be perfect, but we are starting at the top, getting that message down, saying, get on board and work. And that's these destinations that did the destination audits are a great example of that. The politicians were involved in those destination audits. Local police were involved in some of those destination audits. It's a whole community effort. So I'm not saying that by next year the whole province is going to be spick and span and nothing will ever happen. No, sadly I'm not. But what I am saying is they are making efforts. We are, in our efforts, we're starting at the top and trying to work down, because we take your point on that. And I think if more and more, like Deborah said, more and more Rainbow Registered pops up, more and more you see imagery, more and more it becomes commonplace. You'll see it. And I think one of the really great things, Spencer was talking about this in the training yesterday, is when you think about the recent StatsCan survey of, and correct me if I get this wrong, but let's say, and TJ, you're here too, you can correct me, there's a million people that identify as part of the community. What is the exact number between 15 and 24? My point is trying to be that it's a growing thing. More and more people are becoming identified as part of the community.
Yeah, they haven't, I believe, gone to the data dump yet that's about like LGBT plus as a whole. It's been more about like gender and sex. But the census found just under 101,000 people across Canada identify as trans or non-binary, which equals to about, I think it's like 0.33% of the population 18 and older, 15 and older. Anyways, point being, it is a growing number, because I think TJ might be able to correct me, but the last census or some recent data from a few years ago, it was, I think, around 75,000 people identified as trans or non-binary, and now that number is over 100,000. So I think we're seeing a lot more people that are comfortable coming out, and a lot more people that are comfortable with transitioning, and people that are more comfortable being themselves. And the societal change will not be overnight, but it takes each of us, that one person, to make that difference and start that transition. And the imagery helps, being Rainbow Registered helps, doing the destination audits and getting government and politicians on board. These are the small things over time that will make it so I can hold my boyfriend's hand walking down the street and I feel comfortable, because even where I live right now, that's not the case, I will say, being completely honest. And it's unfortunate, but I think that it does take all of us to make a concerted effort.
We have time for one quick last question. Yes.
Hi there, my name is Larry Lang from Federation of Gay Games and Customer Experience Professional Association. So sports tourism, it's something important. Ontario has some of the biggest gay sports leagues in the world for both male, female, and non-binary. So love to hear more about what would be your strategy for sports tourism. Thanks.
I'm going to be quite transparent. We haven't really turned a lot of efforts towards that. I'm not really familiar with all the programs. Like, I know when we did have the Pan Am Games, there was, an LGBTQ space in the village for the athletes, but that is as far as it went. But we're open to discuss it. Love to hear your ideas and thoughts about it. Are you based here in Toronto? Yeah. Okay, come see us. We'll be willing to talk.
And I also think, just putting on my previous hat with Destination Toronto, I can tell you Destination Toronto, we were very proactive and partnered with a lot of local sports leagues to bring everything from the amateur baseball league to the part of the Pan Am Games to the gay games we even bid on. I've seen a lot of great bids over the years in my previous role with Destination Toronto, so I do know that there is a lot of effort. I don't know that there's a targeted strategy. You're quite right about that.
Yeah.
But I know that any single time that anyone puts up their hand from a local hosting perspective, I know that Toronto was on board. Certainly if there was monies from Destination Ontario, they were happy to contribute to that. So I would submit that contact Destination Toronto and get them on board with going after some of those things, because it's the city that leads the bid. The province will support, but the city leads the bid.
That's correct.
And that's it. I think we're good. Thank you very much for joining us. If you would like to get Rainbow registered, please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you.